afternoon. Thank you for joining us. It is interesting. This hour, we're going to visit with Dwayne Cates, frequent HLN commentator, Evan Bolick, who's been on Jane Velez Mitchell, and Melissa Johnson, who is our media expert, and both of them are from Rose Law Firm. Dwayne Cates, of course, is from Dwayne Cates. But Dwayne brought up an interesting thing. He was listening to Mike Kimmerer discuss the Deborah Milkey case and the fact that 21 years later, they're coming up with a defense.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Jay, and it's interesting we have a social media person here today because I kind of get roasted on the social media. It's easy to be a Jodi Arias hater, and it's easy to be a Jodi Arias prosecutor, but she needs a defense. Okay, because you have to have a defense, you have to have a vigorous defense. And people are saying, well, why don't they just take her out and kill her? She admitted that she killed him, she's guilty, But the Milkey case is exactly why you don't have that. Because here's a woman that's been on death row for over 20 years, and now she's if the appeals work out, could end up being released because the process wasn't done correctly. And you got to take however long it takes, and you got to do whatever process you have to do. So when you get a conviction, you know it's a conviction.
People are picking on you because of your defense. Melissa Johnson, the social media has not been kind to Dwayne.
That's true. The social media hasn't been kind to anybody, no matter what side they're on. But definitely people are going in on Jodi Arias on social media. I would say that pretty much everybody hates Jodi on Twitter. And, yeah, it's apparent. They just don't believe anything she's saying. They don't believe any of her lies. This new post-traumatic stress disorder is almost comical. Everybody's having a good time with the fog. That's just as amusing and unbelievable, and it's just hard to follow.
Evan, the talk about the forensic psychologist, he's getting a lot of attention.
Well, sure, because really he's the best witness that Arias' defense has had since Jodi Arias. But, the thing that I hope jurors are saying, and that I certainly would say, is so what? He can go up there and say she had post-traumatic stress disorder, and I'm sure there'll be another expert to talk about battered women syndrome. But in order to get self-defense, which she absolutely needs to do, she needs to show she was in imminent danger of harm, that her belief of this harm was reasonable. And frankly, neither of these experts are going to be able to put her in imminent danger of harm.
Or you know what? There's nobody else in the room that say she wasn't in imminent danger of harm. Because there were only two people in the room that night, and only those two people know what happened.
Sure, and unfortunately, one of them, the more sympathetic person, is not around to testify on his own behalf, which is why we have this trial.
It's interesting. There was a rape trial in Steubenville, Ohio, and the rape trial took, 2 days? 2 or 3 days. We have the determination already. They're guilty, these two 16 and 17-year-olds. One of them will spend 1 year, the other one 2 years. And how much time have they served already? That will be counted. So
they'll be jailed until they're 21 years old under the law.
They were given 1 year.
They were given less. Oh, I didn't hear that part.
Yes, one of them, the 16-year-old, was given 1 year. The 17-year-old was given 2 years because he sent out tweets or whatever it was, Facebook. He sent out pictures of the nude girl.
Well, the reason it didn't take very long partially was because it was in juvenile court, and the rules are a little bit different in juvenile court, how they work. And I believe that a judge makes the determination and not a jury in juvenile court. So once you take a jury out, you take a ton of time out of trials.
Right, and you know what? Even though I'm pro-prosecution for the Arias case, I do find it, just as an attorney, very troubling how long it has taken for them to get through this case. We in America are supposed to be given a right to a speedy trial, and this has been anything but. Even let alone the testimony, she was sitting behind bars for 2 to 3 years prior to this.
Yeah, but speedy trial rules are for the defendant. They're but she waived time. I mean, defendants, what happens is there is speedy trial, and she could have forced that's what they did in the O.J. Simpson case. They had $28 million, and they hired the best expert they could find in every area, and they jammed it down the prosecution's throat before they could prepare it using speedy trial. Here, she changed lawyers, and every time you do something, you waive time. So it's really it's not a problem for her. It's her choice that it took this long to get to trial.
Well, go ahead, please.
Oh, sorry. Even if that's the case, then I don't think defendants should be able to game the system, so to speak. The longer a trial takes, the more unreliable witness testimony becomes, the more likely it is that chain of custody issues will arise with physical evidence. So, regardless of whether it's the state or the defense's fault, we should be a bit more focused on why there wasn't a speedier resolution to this.
Speedier resolution comes with not going for the death penalty. If you wouldn't have gone for the death penalty, this would have been over years ago. Jodi Arias tried to plead to second-degree murder. They refused to take her plea. So you can't put how long this took on her. And besides that, you have to afford the defendant in a speedy, what they want in a death penalty case.
Melissa, what are people saying about Juan Martinez on the social media, Facebook, Twitter?
On social media, everybody is saying Juan is very aggressive. You have people saying he's over-aggressive, but then you also have a lot of people saying, because Nurmi he's just boring. You have him, and then we're saying, okay, after Nurmi is done, prosecution's going to come up, and Juan is just going to rip into Jodi. He's going to bring everything back to perspective. He's going to wake up the jurors. He's waking us up when we're listening after Nurmi. He puts us to sleep. So altogether, Martinez is definitely doing good things for Jodi.
I've learned a lot from watching Juan Martinez because I have a very similar style in trial, and I am going to tone it down a bunch from here because I think that at some point there's no effect when you're screaming all the time. There's no effect.
And dancing.
Now in cross-examination, you're taught to use voice inflection, movement. You want the jury looking at you, not at the witness. On cross-examination, the attorney's the star, and you don't even want them to pay attention to what the witness says at all. You want them to look at you. So he's doing a good job in that respect. But I just think he's a little over the top.
And, there's no doubt that there's been a bit of shenanigans from the prosecution side, and I think that his fervor has led him into a couple of mistakes. But all of that being said, her defense is entirely built on, hey, jury, trust me, I'm the only one who was there, as we've just discussed in the past.
What mistakes has Juan Martinez made?
He's spent some time highlighting things that really don't go to the trial, especially whether she likes him or whose fault it is that she doesn't understand questions. And I think the most egregious one was she asked her to reenact how Travis attacked her, which really isn't a tactic that prosecutors do too often.
And he also asked, and to be started his cross-examination with,
right.
Now, what about your dumb sister? Well, my sister's not dumb. Well, you said in 2006 that your sister was dumb. That has nothing to do with anything, and it just immediately just kind of put me off.
But yeah, once again, despite all of that, he's really captured the attention of the jurors, especially given how laconic the defense has been. And also, I think more importantly, is her entire defense is resting on, hey, jurors, believe me, I'm the only one who was there. And yet, he's certainly exposed many lapses in her memory, certainly exposed many inconsistencies in her story. And that's really important when the defense is solely based on her trustworthiness.
Melissa, does anyone on social media dislike Juan Martinez? Do they think he's over the top?
I think that everybody agrees he's over the top. I mean, you agree with what he's saying, but it's just so aggressive. And just watching him sometimes, I feel like he's going to reach up there and punch Jodi. It gets really intense. It's interesting to watch, and everybody on social media is seeing that.
Any comments, questions? 277-5827, 277 KTAR. More straight ahead.
If your New Year's resolution is autism.com. Hi, I'm Joe Theismann. No matter what stadium I broadcast from, I'd always have to find the closest bathroom, just in case I had that sudden urge to go. My prostate was giving me fits, but then I heard about Super Beta Prostate's nationwide million-bottle giveaway, and I got a free bottle. What a difference it made. I don't have to go as often, and I don't have to get up at night as much. Now I wake up refreshed and ready to tackle anything. What's so special about Super Beta Prostate is that it's the most widely used supplement supporting a healthy prostate. Super Beta Prostate has sold over 5 million bottles, and it also has a trusted 10-year history, and it's all natural. There's no reason to accept the issues that come with an aging prostate. So get Super Beta Prostate today.
Call right now and you'll learn how to get a free bottle of Super Beta Prostate. Pay only shipping and handling. Call 1-800-517-4837. That's 1-800-517-4837. Hurry, supplies are limited. Call 1-800-517-4837. That's 1-800-517-4837.
Hi, I'm Shannon Doherty. I've played the girl next door and the girl not so next door. I've produced, I've directed, but now I'm doing something I've always wanted to do for me. I'm on my way to getting my college degree. I logged on to Education Connections, the free service that showed me hundreds of schools and degrees so I could pick the right one. Now I'm actually getting my degree in liberal arts online. But you could get yours in business, in culinary arts, in nursing, in criminal justice, even a degree in technology. From my schedule, Education Connection showed me online has the most flexibility. I can study on the set, while traveling, anywhere, anytime. So do something smart for your future. Let Education Connection help you find the right program for free.
Log on now and get Education Connection's free success kit, stuffed with online degrees and scholarship advice. Log on now to 48edconnect.com. That's 48edconnect.com.
Moon Brewing Company.
The issues you care about. Once again, Jay Lawrence on News Talk 92.3 KTAR.
With Dwayne Cates, one of HLN's constants as far as speaking almost for the defense, Evan Bolick, who has been on Jane Velez Mitchell and is obviously a prosecution witness, and Melissa Johnson. Melissa, is Jody online?
Jody is online. She has artwork that is for sale on eBay, and people are on there bidding. It's not quite sure who's selling it, what's happening with the money, but she's using her infamy to make money, and that's just ridiculous.
Do we have any idea what kind of painting she does? Does it show it on eBay?
Yes, you can see everything. They have it on Jane's website and stuff, too. It's all kinds of famous people, like headshots, still life pictures. And then you've also seen the video of her singing in jail and the American Idol in jail. Yeah, that was when she was being interrogated. She's doing her yoga moves. You know, that's a good time to do yoga, do a headstand while you're being interrogated.
What kind of bidding is going on for her paintings?
I honestly have no idea. I'm disgusted by it. I don't want to know how much money she's going to make off her infamy. That's just such a ridiculous idea.
Thousands of dollars. Some of them are going $1,200, $1,400 for
Is that right?
It's called murderabilia, and there are a lot of famous murderers that sell writings and paintings and stuff online.
Sadly, I think we're moving towards a time of monetizing crime, and this case is certainly the perfect firestorm for modern media, that it involves extreme violence, extreme religion, extreme sex, and it's all on film. So if she's found not guilty, and I certainly don't believe she will be, but in that event, it will be amazing how much she stands to profit.
Yes. Murderabilia.
Oh.
You know, I wonder, by the way, if you think that's okay, you can call us at 277-5827-277-KTAR. Is there anything, should someone be able to stop a person accused of murder? Someone who's been in jail as long as Jodi Arias, should we be able to stop her from profiting in any way from her notoriety?
Presumed innocent until proven guilty. She has all the rights that you and I have sitting here today do, until she's found guilty. Now, when she's found guilty, there are some laws on the books in different states about profiting from your crime. And so
I saw someone reenact the crime, trying to do it in, 61 seconds. Trying to do that from the time she rolled over, got up, threw the gun away, went to, what did she do next? She went to get the knife, came back, stabbed him any number of times, then dragged him to the shower, and it took this man really stabbing fast, 67 seconds.
Well, 64 seconds on the camera. But again, now here's what the times are all messed up, okay? The picture that was taken on the 64th second just shows her dragging him down the hall, okay, and so you don't know when all the stab wounds happened from the pictures. It doesn't show a picture with him every stab.
Jody doesn't even know when the stab wounds happened.
So it doesn't have to be 64 seconds, but it can be done in 64 seconds.
Well, sure, if you're, going for gold in some sort of Olympic event. It's just so unlikely given Travis's size and the amount of damage he had to inflict on him from an entire hallway's length away. I think those photos are just going to be the crux of this case, especially because it's a hard pill to swallow that she could have inflicted all of this damage and dragged his body all the way back to the bathroom within the time that the camera flashes again.
What if he was still mobile? And she didn't drag him down the hall, that he was falling and staggering and made his way down the hall.
Dwayne, I saw one analysis, one individual who said all of the blood came from two particular stabs, the neck and one into the chest, and then, after all the other stab wounds, the shot came and there was no blood coming from the head of the shot. So
that's not completely true. The medical examiner said he couldn't tell if there was bleeding because there was so much decomposition.
That was one medical examiner.
Right, that's the one that testified.
Yes.
The only one that counts so far.
Right.
Okay, and he was washed off in the shower. So
right, and parts of the scene were washed as well, all during Jody's convenient blackout, I'd like to add.
All right, the forensic psychologist. Now, the prosecutor doesn't want this man's testimony to begin with, argued against everything he had to say. Why is he so opposed to the forensic psychologist?
Well, I think he's so opposed because it confuses the issues. Once again, and I stated earlier, much of what he has to say I don't think is really relevant to whether or not Travis was murdered or whether self-defense was claimed. But what it does do is it builds incredible sympathy for Jodi Arias, and if sympathy is enough to sway one juror, then the prosecution's in trouble. So he doesn't want to let something in that really isn't relevant to the legal standards that need to be met in this case, but could still really impact a juror who has sympathetic heartstrings.
Hallelujah. And by the way, the jury's not a jury of lawyers. I found, lawyers spend an inordinate amount of time arguing over jury instructions about what the law is in the case. And the judge at the end of this case is going to read 39, 40 pages of stuff to the jury, and they're not going to remember any of it. Okay? And they vote from their heart. And what's going to happen is this, and all they need to do is convince one person that this is the case, just one, and you have a mistrial.
Melissa, do they like the psychologist on Facebook and Twitter?
I personally, because I'm on there too, with everybody, I personally like him because he's boring everybody. Yeah, he's boring everybody to sleep. We're calling him Dr. Fogg. He's putting us all to sleep. Let him keep talking. Let him keep rambling. That's fine. And I think that everybody is agreeing with that on social media.
Most experts are boring. I mean, that's just the nature of trial. Anybody's tried trials. If you can find an expert that's dynamic and can capture a jury, you've hit a home run. But most of them are scientists, and they talk science speak, and you never know.
We're going to talk more about Jodi Arias. We want to find out why the prosecutor feels as though the forensic psychologist is doing the job of the jury. Straight ahead. Bolick and Dwayne Cates from the Dwayne Cates law group, and we're very pleased that all of you joined us. Melissa Johnson, on Twitter and Facebook, what do the people say about Travis? Do they like him? Does anybody say this was a scumbag?
You have some people saying that, not that he deserved to die, but that there were some things off with him that have been revealed in court. But there's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram even. People are posting pictures of him. There's tons of support groups for Travis, and there's a lot of pro-Travises out there.
Who do they believe was the instigator of some of the more bizarre sexual encounters?
We're seeing that Travis is the instigator, but the way Jody has lied, it's hard to make sense of what's really true and what isn't, because we're going off of just what Jody's saying. We have their phone calls that we've listened to, and you do hear Travis saying these fantasies and stuff he has, but also you don't know what Jody brought into that relationship that she showed him, as opposed to him instigating and showing her.
The question of the forensic psychologist, we have a prosecutor who does not want him to testify on a couple of issues because he says those issues are the job of a jury, Dwayne. Well,
he's talking about premeditation, and he's saying that the forensic psychologist wants to testify that it wasn't premeditated based on the crime scene and the way the crime scene's laid out and the way things happened. And I don't quite agree with him, because you know what? We have crime scene technicians and crime scene analysts do this every day. They look at a crime scene and they tell you how the crime happened. So I don't see his complaint.
Look, you don't need to premeditate how you're going to stab or shoot your victim. You just need to premeditate that you will be killing the victim. And certainly there's plenty of groundwork that's been laid for the fact that she went to Arizona, she went there covertly, and that she went there to kill him. And that's what we need. We don't necessarily need to show, oh, she planted the knife under the bed, or she had a hidden gun in a shoebox. That's not necessarily what we need to show. We just need to show that's why she was in Arizona, and that groundwork's been laid.
And it's been laid, but really, do you steal a gun, do all this, come to Arizona to kill somebody with the intent to kill somebody, and then instead of shooting him, because you brought a gun with you according to the prosecution's theory, instead of shooting him, you get into hand-to-hand combat with somebody that weighs 65 pounds more than you. Makes no sense. It was a heat of passion. They got in a fight, and she ended up shooting and killing him.
We're going to ask Dwayne Cates about that bullet that he just mentioned. Has anyone ever gone to the grandparents and said, does this bullet match the gun?
Hi, I'm Shannon Doherty. I've played the girl next door and the girl not so next door. I've produced, I've directed, but now I'm doing
3 KTAR.
Dwayne Cates, Evan Bolick, Melissa Johnson. Dwayne, the shell casing that they found, has anyone ever gone to the grandparents and said, the gun that was missing, what kind of ammunition did you use?
They haven't, and I find that there's two really interesting things about the shell casing. Number one is there's 4 or 5 different manufacturers of that caliber of ammunition, and we need to know if the ammunition stolen, the gun and the ammunition stolen from the grandparents' house, matched the ammunition of the shell casing. Also, the shell casing was found on top of dried blood. It had no blood on it. That means that the blood had to be deposited, dried, and then the shell casing laid on it. So it had to have gotten kicked there or placed there or something later on.
How important is that?
Jay, 3 words, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, whether she's admitted that she shot him, it doesn't really matter where the gun came from. Even if you want to go through the premeditation, the fact that she knew he had a gun, had it hidden, and that it would be easily accessible to her, still goes to the premeditation prong, regardless of whether the gun actually came from her grandparents or not.
Yeah, but you know what? It makes the prosecution story start to fall apart if they can prove that it wasn't the gun that was stolen. So if the prosecution's lying to the jury about this, then maybe the prosecution's lying to you about all the rest of the information.
Well, I certainly think the prosecution will win the who's lying game if it comes down to that.
I believe that. I think Jodi Arias is as guilty as any trial I've ever seen.
Now we need 11 more of those people on the jury to agree with you.
You know what? There might be one of me.
There might be just one who could throw this case into a hung jury. And how sympathetic do you find any sympathy for Jodi online, Melissa?
When the trial first started, you're looking at this beautiful girl. She's stunning, she's good looking, and you kind of have a little bit of sympathy. You start hearing about what a jerk Travis is, and you have people, a little bit of sympathy. But ultimately, no. I mean, she brutally murdered him. It's cruel. She's going to get the death penalty, and I think that's what everybody is saying on social media. You have very little people. You have very little people saying otherwise.
And Jodi's, one of the big issues with Jodi having testified so long is she kind of ran herself over in that since she's been on the stand, she's drained away some goodwill in that we've seen her curse on the stand, we've seen her smirk on the stand, we've seen her act arrogantly on the stand. So it's one thing, the longer you're up there, the more your personality's exposed, and she's certainly been exposed over her month of testimony.
Which proves that she's human, which is going to make it harder for the jury to put her to death.
18 days. She's been on for 18 days. I've never heard of that before.
I've never seen anything like this trial in any regards before.
Well, the question then becomes, is there going to be some sympathy somewhere? Apparently, Melissa, there is no sympathy for her online. None whatever.
No.
You can't think of anyone that says, poor Jodi.
Maybe a little bit. Maybe there's people out there, maybe real domestic violence victims might have a little sympathy.
But you haven't seen it.
No.
I've seen it on my Facebook. I post my appearances on YouTube, a lot of my appearances on HLN and In Session, and I get quite a few comments on there. And, I get a lot of haters, which is good for me because if, I don't care if you hate me or like me, just watch me,
But you know what's more important even than social media is the jury questions, and they have not indicated any sort of sympathy. And the one that will forever stick in my mind was basically one, and I'm paraphrasing, that said, "Dear Jodi, why should we believe you?"
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? There were 220 questions. If a jury had their mind absolutely made up, would they ask 220 questions?
Does it make any sense at all for the jury to ask questions? Only 3 states allow that. Does that make sense?
I think it does. You know what? Because juries are smarter than a lot of the times the attorneys give them credit for, and they think of things that we don't think of sometimes, and they ask great questions. Sometimes it hurts me, sometimes it's good for me, but they ask great questions.
And as the arbiter, since they're the body who makes the judgment, why shouldn't they get all of the information they feel they need to convict Jodi Arias?
Well, in any case, as long as it's within the rules of evidence, I agree. I think that they should have all the information that they want as long as it fits within the rules of evidence.
I'm disturbed by the fact that she turns to the jury even for a yes or no answer. Is anyone else bothered? What do they say about that online?
I think it's a little disturbing. We've seen body experts saying, looking at her body movements and language and saying that Jodi's up there having fun. She's making direct eye contact. She's trying to, touch their souls and, trying to get the sympathy, but it ultimately just isn't working.
Sometimes I have witnesses do that, sometimes I don't, just depending on the case. A lot of times when I ask a witness a question, I'll say, tell the jury something. And then they should turn and tell the jury something. But,
of course, the prosecutor just wants yes or no answers.
Of course
he's not getting that from Jodi.
He's getting a lot of, I guess, maybe, possibly.
And like I was saying before, instead of spending 20 minutes in the weeds hunting pheasant, with her while you're trying to argue about whether she should, just say yes or no, you can simply turn as you're passing the jury, roll your eyes, walk back to the podium, And the jury gets the idea that this witness is just being stupid.
I'm also not a fan of her addressing the jury directly so much, because what do we always hear in fights from people? How could you lie directly to my face? Well, we know that she's lied, whether they're minor or major, and now she's doing it while looking at the jury. Not very sympathetic.
Was she lying when she's talking to the jury? She says she's under oath and now telling the truth.
That is interesting, the eye-rolling that's being done by Travis's sister, the policewoman's sister, who sits there and rolls her eyes at everything. I wonder if the jurors see that. They
can, and the judges admonished them a couple times about reacting to testimony, and so that's it shouldn't be done from the gallery.
Right, and I believe, though, that he's admonished both sides, because Jody's family is there, and from reports I've read, they've been giggling at times and looking pretty optimistic at times, so it cuts both ways.
I haven't seen the mother and the twin sister. They look like statues. Absolutely.
I've seen them outside of the courtroom, and they're very attractive, very nice-looking people. They really are. They look totally different when they're sitting in the jury in the gallery.
Let's talk about the death penalty straight ahead.
According to the interwebs, an average New Year's resolution lasts.
Melissa is the non-lawyer in the group, and Melissa deals with people online. The thought, you have also seen some videos that the jury is not going to see.
Yes, we're seeing video of her in the interrogation room that the jury isn't getting to see, and that's what the public has. That's what we get extra, but my view differs from these two attorneys, because I'm not an attorney. When I talk to Evan, he says, yeah, this is a jury or this is an attorney tactic, or something that attorneys know and are trained in telling their client to do, whereas I don't know any of that stuff. So I feel like I'm sitting there thinking the same thing that the jury is thinking, and when the jury got to ask their questions, it was a lot of the similar questions that I was asking myself, or that on social media we were asking each other, because these are things we want to know, and I even have the extra info that they don't have.
We mentioned the defense attorney briefly, and I think we should deal with him a little bit. I think he's been good. Your thoughts?
Dermy is technically very well. He's a very smart man. He is a very, very good, competent attorney. He is not going to win any Academy Awards or get any points for style, but he is a very good, very accomplished attorney.
I have no qualms with saying that Nermi's been good technically, but really, what does skill matter if it's not coming across to the jurors? If the jurors are disinterested and not paying attention, which they often seem to be doing while he speaks, it really doesn't matter what you're presenting or how you're going about it.
I almost thought Nermi's, the way he acts is trying to show the jury that the way Martinez is acting, Jody's saying, you're yelling at me, you're being very aggressive, and it's making me scramble and shake. So Nermi is doing complete opposite than Martinez, and maybe exaggerating it to show that Jody's so delicate and needs to be talked to in a certain way, or else she forgets things.
And Nermi's presentation is also having the effect of making the prosecutor stand out much more in people's minds, and that's generally not a good thing for Jody.
Yeah, I think his calm demeanor, actually helps some. Again, in a perfect world, you'd have, Clarence Darrow, up there. But, not everybody has, absolutely everything that, the whole package, and everybody has different styles, and different styles work for different attorneys.
And this one, apparently, we hope works for him, those of us that don't want to see the death penalty for Jody. What do you think? Are they going to be able to beat the death penalty, Dwayne?
You know what? I hope they do. I think that life in prison is much tougher punishment than the death penalty, number one. And number two, there was one point in this country before DNA where 1 in 6 people on death row were actually were innocent and released, and it's just, and we're having another one where it's questioned whether this person on death row is actually guilty. I think life in prison is a much better punishment if they find first degree.
How about women in prison?
Sure.
On death row.
It's really this is really intriguing, but I looked up the statistics, and less than 2% of the inmates on death row currently are women. So clearly, there seems to either be women are committing less atrocious crimes, which I'm dubious about, or when I think this is more likely that women are, or that jurors are naturally inclined to not impose the death penalty on women. But if there was ever a woman who I think will fit into the minority trend, it will be Jodi Arias, assuming that she's convicted of first-degree murder.
Yeah, and I think, number one, that's a big assumption, because I think that the only thing they can prove for sure is there was a fight in that bathroom and Jodi killed Travis. I don't think they've begun to prove that it was premeditated. And so, I think it's going to end up second-degree murder at the end.
Well, I hope that there's Tums in prison, because given the jury questions and social media, things don't seem to be going well for her.
The jury questions, didn't they get enough from the prosecution? Didn't the prosecution do a good enough job of questioning Jodi Arias? And Dwayne brought up an interesting thing. If they weren't certain about things, why are there so many questions if they find her so guilty?
Well, I would say that when people go into a courtroom, they're accustomed to something like Law and Order, a quick, tidy focus on the main facts of the case. But as we've discovered, that's clearly not what occurs in most criminal trials. So I'd say these questions don't show a lack of presentation by the prosecution, but rather they're indicative of they either want to hear something again because they're incredulous about it, or they just want further clarification in a way that to them will speak louder and clearer.
Or they're confused, and a confused jury is the defense attorney's best friend.
Well, I guess we're going to find out. We've still got what ahead? We've got more of the forensic psychologist tomorrow, and then what happens? Well,
and then I believe there's going to be a domestic violence expert that's going to be on, and I haven't heard of any other defense witnesses. And then the state will have a chance to put on rebuttal evidence.
And, let me tell you, the fact that that'll be the summation of the defense is pretty incredible to me, and the fact that Jodi was unable to find one character witness who's known her for a long time, who's been able to come up and just say, hey, she's a great girl. She's done a lot of wonderful things in her life. She's not capable of this. But the fact that they couldn't even dig up one person, the best that they could get were ex-boyfriends, that's pretty incredible. And I think the jury will notice that.
And they had ex-boyfriends were called by the prosecutor, and they got up there and they said good things about Jodi. That's all you need. Character witnesses are way overblown in trials.
They certainly don't want to go, Melissa, with your tweeters. They are not going to be the best witnesses in the history of the world. Dwayne Cates, Evan Bolick, Melissa Johnson, I thank all of you very much.
Well, thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for having me on.
We'll get a chance to watch this coming week, and maybe if there's anything interesting, we'll all get together again.
And tweet about it.
Indeed. Coming up, the mayor of Phoenix will be in studio to answer your questions. What about the food tax? That's what everyone's going to ask. Straight ahead.